all of this technology definitely has its benefits, especially in our profession. Hopefully they can't eventually replace us with AI, and people still need attorneys, right?
Absolutely. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think one of the great things about our profession is that it would be next to impossible for computers to literally replace us, especially as trial lawyers. If you go to court like I do, and you're in trial and you do evidentiary hearings, that whole system is based upon human beings, and I seriously doubt that we're going to have to be concerned about that. I'd like to turn it around as a perspective and say, let's use these computers. Let's use computer animation and virtual reality and other things such as AI that can enhance our ability to practice law and become even better lawyers.
Hey there, hot messes. Welcome to Success of a Hot Mess, where we celebrate the art of juggling life's chaos and coming out on top. I'm Stacey Isaacs, your host and resident rock star lawyer, dance mom, and survivor. We're going to dive into candid conversations about conquering challenges, embracing our unique selves, and finding success in the beautiful mess of it all.
Good morning. Welcome to the Success of a Hot Mess podcast, brought to you by workinjuryrights.com. We represent injured workers throughout the state of Florida. This morning, I have the honor of having Ken Padowitz on my podcast. He is a criminal defense lawyer at Kenneth Padowitz, PA, locally here in Florida, and Ken defends people accused of crimes. Is it just in the Fort Lauderdale area or all throughout South Florida?
So throughout Florida, I represent people who are accused of crimes or charged with crimes, and I practice federally in federal courts all throughout the entire United States.
Excellent. It sounds like a very interesting job.
It is extremely interesting. Every one of my cases affects people's liberty and affects their life in a major way, and so it's definitely an interesting position for me to be in.
So I have had other criminal defense attorneys on, specifically my brother, but he practices in New York. And what I have gleaned over time is that the happiest attorneys are those that practice criminal defense. I'm not sure. Well, I did ask, I asked him specifically, why is that? And the answer was that, each case is unique and specific set of facts. It's not like what I do could be the same injury over and over, but it does sound very interesting and also rewarding. Do you find that your clientele is appreciative of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not exaggerating when I say I affect people's lives. They literally come to me concerned that they may go to jail or prison, sometimes for a large portion of their life or their entire life. And so when I get a case, it's as individual as the person who is hiring me. And I treat them like they're my family, and that's what I tell them. It's not a shtick. I tell them I'm going to do the same exact thing as if you were my brother or sister on your case. And I treat them that way, and it is extremely rewarding for me when I am able to get to a result that my clients are happy with, they can live with, and it is definitely a job that makes me happy. I could absolutely retire now. I'm doing this for almost 40 years, and I love it. I hope to keep doing this as long as I stay healthy for the next 15 years. I'm working, luckily, with family members. I have my son, Josh Padowitz, is one of the lawyers in my firm. My oldest son, Ryan, is one of my two paralegals, and we have a third lawyer as well, Juliana. But together we form a team. I think we are the best criminal defense firm in the state of Florida, and not just South Florida.
Yeah, when you're working with family members and you can probably trust their work product, it probably gives you some peace of mind. So when someone is charged with a crime, do they find you? Is it primarily via word of mouth? Do you do any marketing, advertising? Tell me how you do it.
So interestingly, for a good part of my career, I'm doing this almost 40 years. I'm a former homicide prosecutor with the Broward State Attorney's Office. I was there 16 years. About 12 of those years I was a homicide prosecutor, just doing first-degree murder cases. And when I left there, I was going to be a rich personal injury lawyer. And in fact, I had a multi-million-dollar case where my client only wanted $60,000 or $30,000 actually to start with, and he was beaten up by the former boxing champion of the world, Shannon Briggs. And we went to trial in Miami and ended up getting a $2,080,000 verdict. But I hated it. I did not like personal injury, and as I was learning that I did not like that, and did not become a major partner in a major South Florida personal injury law firm that we were starting from the beginning, I started going out there, and my name as a homicide prosecutor was out there, and I built upon that. And so for the large part of the first part of my career as a criminal defense lawyer, it was word of mouth. Then at some point, my son, Josh, who was very tech savvy, said, "Dad, you need a website." And I fought against it at first. I said, "I don't think I need a website. Everybody knows who I am." But eventually, he got me to the point where we needed a website, and he built it. And we did something a little different. We put hundreds of links on the site because lawyers, just like everyone else, you have lawyers out there that exaggerate on their websites or potentially outright don't say the truth on their sites, just like in any profession. And so I wanted to be a little different. I put hundreds of links on my site, and my son did, so that it would aid potential clients in able to research me and find out who I am and what I've done. And I think that's what's took me apart from many other attorneys' websites. And so we get clients from a whole different ways. One of them is word of mouth. One of them now is through my website. Another is through advertising that we do on the web. And a combination of those things create the amount of work that we have. And we have a tremendous amount of cases that come in on a daily and weekly basis.
Do you do any social media advertising at this point? You know, as injury lawyers now, we had to get into the TikTok game. We have to do things that maybe 10 years ago I would have thought would somehow, degrade the name, but we literally had to for our clientele. But I don't know that if someone's charged with a crime if they're going on Facebook to look for an attorney.
Right. Well, we definitely do social media as well. I'm on Facebook. I'm on the other technological avenues out there. But I found that a good way for me as a criminal defense lawyer to get my name out there is to volunteer my time as an expert on criminal cases. So I made it a point to have contacts at all the local news stations, the newspapers. I befriended myself to national hosts and guests, and so I was on national TV hundreds, if not thousands of times over the last 40 years. And although it takes time and energy to go to a studio and beam it up by satellite, I was on the Today Show, I was on Good Morning America, I was on with Wolf Blitzer or Larry King Live, and I was not compensated for that time, but the benefits of having my name out there and having it people recognize that I'm an expert in the area of criminal defense and criminal law absolutely served my caseload and my firm well to have that type of exposure.
Yeah, I mean, I see you've been on everything. Barbara Walters, Larry King, the O'Reilly Factor. I mean, there is a whole paragraph of appearances that you've done. So for other attorneys that are maybe just starting out and listening to the podcast, how do they even, you said you befriended. Did you literally walk into news stations, "Hey, I'm Ken Padowitz, please have me on"? How does that work?
Well, so it's not quite that easy. I agree with you. What I think that I did, and I think this really goes into every area of life, not just law, is pick one area and decide to have the goal of being the best at it. And that's what I did. I decided that I was going to be the best criminal defense attorney and the best trial lawyer that I could be. And once I made that goal, then everything else that fell into that aided me. So, for example, I decided I'm going to do cutting-edge things in court, and I have. I've done the first computer animation in the state of Florida, and one of the first cases in the United States with a written appellate opinion upholding the use of computer animation. I recently had international news using VR, using virtual reality in the courtroom. So I'm constantly doing cutting-edge things, and it doesn't require a lot of money to do these. That what I'm talking about did, animation and virtual reality, but All the way back when I was a brand new baby prosecutor right out of law school, I once did a DUI trial. And the jury, I was the prosecutor, the jury came back not guilty. And at that time, you could talk to juries without permission from the court. And in the hallway, I said to the jury, why did you find the defendant not guilty? I had all the evidence. And they said, well, you didn't have any evidence. All you did was have the officer testify, but you didn't have any evidence, which was not correct. It's not what I said during jury selection, that testimony is actually evidence, testimonial evidence. So what I did is the next time I did a DUI trial, I did something cutting edge. It wasn't done in DUI trials. I recreated evidence in the courtroom. I had the officer come down from the stand and draw a diagram of the street, and then using a red pen, I had him draw a box for the car of the defendant, and then use the red marker to draw a line weaving up the diagram. And then I asked him if it was fair and accurate, and the defense objected and said, this is not to scale, which it doesn't have to be. It has to be fair and accurate. So I actually had it placed in evidence, and the jury got to bring back this newly created evidence that they did in court back in the jury room. The point of this story is that the more creative you are and the more cutting edge you can be that sets you apart from other lawyers in your field, the more likely you're going to attract that type of media exposure and press, and people are going to want to talk to you about other cases and get your opinions. So I wasn't born into the media. I created it and laid the groundwork so that I could then leverage that type of exposure into building my law practice.
So are you referring to State versus Albasu, or where the virtual reality animation, or are you talking about a different case?
I'm talking, well, when I talked about the DUI with the diagram, that was way back 40 years ago in court with just a marker. No money, okay. No expense. And so, that is the basis that has me 40 years later doing in State versus Albasu a virtual reality where it's worldwide coverage, where I'm getting calls from Germany and Japan and being interviewed because it's one of the first times, if not the first time in the world, where virtual reality was admitted into evidence in a criminal courtroom.
So when we say virtual reality, are you talking about literally, someone is looking through one of these, you know what I'm talking about? Is that what
Yes.
it was?
That's exactly what it was. We had you could actually, it was in Newsweek. I was interviewed by National Fox News. I was on TMZ. Yes, we actually had the judge looking through a headset at a computer animation, a forensic computer animation that recreated an incident that occurred in Southwest Ranches in Broward County, Florida. And it became national news and international news because the judge was now allowing into evidence a recreation based upon an expert's opinion of a crime scene recreation, putting it into an animation so the judge could see exactly what our expert was saying, what his opinion was. And it tremendously aided us in communicating to the judge what the evidence in the case was and why my client was not guilty, why he was innocent.
Now that was at the appellate level?
No, this is at the trial level. So we were in front of a circuit court judge in Broward County, Florida, and Judge Siegel, which we are still in the middle of this hearing. We're having our closing arguments this Friday, that the judge is being asked to give immunity, which we call it the stand your ground law in Florida, but to give immunity to my client that he should never have been arrested by the Davie Police Department and should never have been prosecuted by the Broward County State Attorney's Office.
Do the jurors get to use the virtual reality evidence?
So that's one of our goals, is back in 1992, I actually had a jury see a computer animation for the first time in the United States that recreated, as the prosecutor I put this in, recreated the crime scene. To today's time, doing computer animation and then using one of those scenes as virtual reality, we're asking Judge Siegel to allow us, if he doesn't grant my client immunity, to allow the jury, if we have to have a jury trial, to see this animation in the format of virtual reality.
a lot of times I would think you don't even need the virtual reality reenactment because there is so much surveillance everywhere. Would you agree with that? Like, let's say a robbery or something like that. It's all right there on video. So what sets these cases apart where it's more helpful to have the virtual reality?
Well, unfortunately, in the United States, we're not quite as advanced as, let's say, in Europe. In London, they have many, many, many more cameras on every street corner and every street. We are much more limited in the amount of surveillance that we actually have in the United States. And especially if you come to a location like here in Broward County in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, there are some places such as banks and other businesses, and maybe some people have Ring doorbells, but there's a large percentage of the area of our county and of South Florida that is not under surveillance. And so the vast majority of crimes are not on video. And so in the case where I did virtual reality, the people at a wedding who were actually in a mob-like situation and attacking my client in his own home, in his own premises where he throws weddings on his property, when he was being attacked, he was being videotaped by people at the wedding. So there is video of that. What there's not video of is what happened before he was forced to pull out a gun. And so we had to do an animation as a defense and recreate it from an expert to show how he was surrounded, how he had to retreat, how his wife and his son had been previously attacked minutes earlier before he was woken up and said, hey, people that are on your staff are going to be attacked. And so we had to counterbalance that video that was taken by people at a wedding to show, hey, my client had a right to defend himself. He was in fear for his life, and that's why he had to pull out a gun. So animation and virtual reality help to fill in those gaps when there is not video of what actually occurred.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually amazing. That's fascinating. And that is one of the benefits of, phones. And, we say there are a lot of negatives, but, all of this technology definitely has its benefits, especially in our profession. Hopefully they can eventually replace us with AI, and people still need attorneys, right?
Well, absolutely. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think one of the great things about our profession is that it would be next to impossible for computers to literally replace us, especially as trial lawyers. If you go to court like I do, and you're in trial and you do evidentiary hearings, that whole system is based upon human beings, and I seriously doubt that we're going to have to be concerned about that. I'd like to turn it around as a perspective and say, let's use these computers. Let's use computer animation and virtual reality and other things such as AI that can enhance our ability to practice law and become even better lawyers.
So I see we have something else in common. You previously sat as chairman of a grievance committee for the Florida Bar. I also was chairperson of the grievance committee, and that was in Sunrise. I don't know where you did, but that was kind of a fun little job, reviewing other bar complaints.
It's very, very interesting to aid our profession, and we do self-regulate, and so it's important to have what we have set up, which is grievance committees, to review complaints against lawyers and see if action should be taken, and whether or not those lawyers should be answering for what they did. And so I think it's an important contribution. And you were on a committee, so we're not paid. We volunteer our time to do that. And I enjoyed the 3 years that I was volunteering on a committee.
Yeah, that was interesting for me as well. I know that you've tried over 400 jury trials, but pretty much we always remember our very first trial. Do you remember the facts of your first jury trial?
So here's the problem that I have. I was a certified legal intern in my last semester of law school. It's called a CLI. The Supreme Court says that you can actually practice law as an attorney even though you haven't even passed the bar or haven't graduated law school. I
Under supervision, right?
Right, under supervision it was supposed to be. A large percentage of my trials, there was no other prosecutor in the courtroom, and I was always the lead attorney. I think I did somewhere around 27 jury trials as an intern before I graduated law school. And the way I did that was I went up to every assistant state attorney who were new right out of law school, and I said, give me your worst cases, and I will handle them. And every prosecutor, especially new ones, want to impress their bosses and supervisors, and they want to win cases. So they don't want cases that they think they can't win, so they dumped what they thought were bad cases on me, and I ended up winning more than half of them. And I got a lot of cases to try, and so I became very, very experienced trial attorney before I graduated law school. So I don't remember the first one. I remember some of the first ones. I remember a very interesting one. This was my first media case, where a woman had a boyfriend, and he was pressuring her for sex, and she did not want to and didn't agree to that. And so he had a pet cougar, a baby cougar that he unleashed on his girlfriend, who is scratching and biting and terrorizing her. And so when I got to become an assistant state attorney, this is one of the first cases that had been declined by the previous prosecutor, and I reviewed it. And I said, no, I think there's a case here. I think I can prove this in front of a jury. And I actually prosecuted that individual for culpable negligence for unleashing his cougar on his girlfriend. So that was a memorable, one of my first cases as an assistant state attorney that I remember prosecuting.
See what I'm saying about these cases being unique and interesting? Pet cougar. Is that even legal?
It was legal in the fence and everything that he had, but it got media attention. The television covered not only the cougar and where he was kept, but the trial itself. And that was my first media type case, and I've had hundreds since then. I have extremely interesting cases from first-degree murder all the way down to misdemeanor DUIs and trespass. And for every individual that I represent, it's extremely serious to them, and in many ways it affects their life. So I definitely have about 10 or 15 books in me if I ever get around to having the time to write them.
That's interesting. Have you ever received any death threats from your clients, angry clients?
So interestingly, never as a defense lawyer, which has been a large part of my career now. As a prosecutor, yes. I was moved up very quickly under the state attorney, Michael Satz. As I said, I was a homicide prosecutor for 12 of my 16 years. I was a career criminal prosecutor. I prosecuted a gentleman who the Miami Herald reporter covering him and his brother, they were called the Riccatelli brothers, and they apparently the MO for the brothers was to find drug dealers and then violently do a home invasion robbery. They'd knock on the door and then slam their butt of a rifle into their face, breaking their eye orbit and their teeth, and knocking and breaking their nose and tying them up. And so they were a very violent gang. And so a Miami Herald reporter coined the term home invasion robbery. It hadn't been used before. That ended up becoming the name for a crime that almost all 50 states have on the books now. And I prosecuted that one of the Riccatelli brothers, and he was a hitman, and he also threatened me. We found out while he was in a Kentucky jail going to testify for the prosecution in a murder case there. He ended up saying to one of the people in the jail with him that when he got out, he was going to murder the judge and myself. So that was kind of unnerving. I'm not a big personal, since I was a homicide prosecutor and handling many cases involving guns, I wasn't very fond of them. I went out and got myself a Glock and learned how to shoot it, and I used to write the name of the individual over the target and practice, and I would have the Broward Sheriff's Office come by my house every hour. So a lot of stress at the time, but it was not an issue, and the vast majority of my career in 40 years, I mean, it only happened maybe 2 times when I was a prosecutor, handling very, very serious cases.
Those are some very good odds there. You know, I think my line of work is considered one of the most dangerous in that regard. You have people out of work, maybe not happy with the amount of their settlement or whatever. They're really angry at the insurance company, but sometimes, unfortunately, well, more so they're unhappy with the insurance company and the insurance company's lawyer. And so I did do defense for a while, and unfortunately, there was an attorney that was actually shot and killed. But it's interesting to me that it happens more frequently in injury law than criminal defense, which is what one would suspect. I know that you also taught at Nova, right?
Yeah, I graduated college as a teacher. I taught 6 months in Gainesville and 6 months here in the Broward County school system, so I had that kind of in my blood. So after I graduated law school, within a couple of years, I went back as an adjunct law professor and ended up teaching for approximately 17 years. I taught scientific evidence, which is a fancy term for dealing with experts in court, and I taught trial advocacy, which is obviously being in court in front of judges and juries. And I love teaching. I did that, like I said, for like 17 years, and it was a very, very enjoyable experience. I kind of miss it. I've actually lectured all over the United States and in Florida, and at some point I'm probably going to go back and start doing some teaching here and there.
What do you do, Ken, in your spare time when you're not working?
Well, if you're not counting my 4 children, which I count, and my 3 grandchildren, my wife, a recent horse that me and my wife bought named Justice. My wife is a former prosecutor of 20 years, and now she's a family lawyer. So we decided that the right name for our new horse was named Justice. If you don't count all those things, I love to fill up my day. I have a lot of cases. I have a lot of family that I want to spend time with, my grandchildren, and I enjoy every day. I thank the universe every day that I wake up and I'm here. It's a good day when you're vertical, and I enjoy what I do. I just love what I do. And when I hear about lawyers that are upset about the practice of law, they're not happy, I wish I could help them, because I love the practice of law. Do I love every client? No. Am I thrilled or happy with every judge I'm in front of? Absolutely not. Some of my best friends and my wife's best friends are circuit court judges and county court judges, but I'm not happy with every single judge, just like we're not happy with every lawyer that we meet. So it's an individual thing, but I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy my day, and time is definitely at a premium.
Do you think it's ever too late? Like, let's say I'm maybe want to switch over to become a criminal defense attorney after 27 years doing workers' compensation. Do you think it's too late?
Never too late. In fact, when I was a law professor, I had young people in my class, and I had people going to law school for the first time in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And my wife is actually a perfect example. My wife was a prosecutor for 20 years. She ended up running for circuit court judge twice, as I did. I ran once in 2006, and we lost, and we both say to each other, the best thing that ever happened to us is that we lost, because we're not umpires, we're batters, and I think maybe we didn't know that about ourselves enough. But my wife was for 20 years as a criminal prosecutor, and she switched into family law. So now she's going from being an expert in one area of the law, completely switching gears and having to learn a whole nother area of law, a whole nother group of people that are practicing, different judges, and she made the transition amazingly. I'm not going to say it's easy, but she did it. I'm a little biased. I think she's one of the best family lawyers in South Florida. She can run circles, I believe, around other family lawyers that don't know the evidence code like a trial lawyer. My wife, Kenneth Padowitz, has done over 75 jury trials as a prosecutor. So she's been able to use those skills and convert them into the new area of law. So I think the moral of the story is you can switch into any area. I think it's never too late for you to be able to go to another part of the law. That's one of the wonderful things about having a law degree, and learning it and becoming the best at it. And I think you can do it at any age.
Well, I want to thank you, Ken Padowitz. This has been very interesting. I think we've just hit the tip of the iceberg. People can probably just put your name into YouTube and all of these appearances will come up, from CNN to MSNBC to Fox, People Magazine. And if someone is in need, or they have a friend or family member in need of a criminal defense lawyer, they can just go to your website, which is, tell us what it is.
It's lauderdalecriminaldefense.com.
And if they should need a family lawyer, they can find your wife, Kristen. How do they find her?
She's at lauderdaledivorcelawyer.com.
Okay, I thank you so much for your time. I know it comes at a premium, and I appreciate having you on the show. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Success of a Hot Mess. If you loved what you heard today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a beat. And hey, sharing is caring. Share this podcast with your friends, family, and anyone who could use a dose of inspiration. Until next time, keep rocking those hot mess moments with style and grace. Cheers.